Oh, here we go. We've got people joining. Hi, everyone.
Hello again.
Hello. Hi.
Hi. Hi, Helen.
Hi, friends.
You all know each other?
Yeah, I know Helen. I know Helen a little bit. We've met before. Hi, Anna.
Hi.
Lovely.
Yeah, you got my email really quickly. I was like, someone said yes to this. And then sent you the wrong ones, but yeah. So sorry.
Don't worry, it's fine.
We're here now.
Everywhere. Profile. Okay, I'm going just to go on the other Zoom link, or rather Instagram page. Okay, nobody else has commented. I think.
On it.
Oh, I'm sorry, Helen.
It's all right. It's absolutely fine.
Oh.
Don't worry.
Okay, I'm actually going to edit the post in here and maybe say to PMS. All right. What shall we do? Do we want to wait a bit more, or maybe up to 1:15, or shall we start?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's totally up to you. It's totally up to you. I don't know whether you want to talk about what your project is, or do you want to wait to do that?
We've got some new faces here.
Yeah, we can maybe. Rianne, do you want to introduce the project a little bit? I can do that, but
No,
yeah?
You're going to be talking for the rest of it. I'll do this bit and then I'll just be an observer.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we
Hello,
can start.
everybody. Hello, new faces. Welcome to Wombenhood. It's a project that was launched nearly a year ago now. We started thinking about it. And one of its main aims is to empower and educate people about the menstrual cycle. At the moment, we're doing that through our DIY Knicker Kit. So we're hosting 3 months worth of workshops and talks all about the menstrual cycle and everything surrounding it, alongside this Knicker Kit, in which people can channel their creative response of what they've learned during this time into something textile related. That will then go into an exhibition sort of in June, July time, under Val's university degree exhibition. But it won't stop there. It will continue going. And of course, due to COVID and things like that, we do want something very physical as well. One of the biggest things about Wombenhood is that it's open to all. So we do have terminologies. So to be open to everybody. We call people that actually experience the menstrual cycle firsthand menstruals. They're also classed as the primary party. So other people that directly influences their body. We then have the secondary party, which are those who observe it or who no longer have wombs, or have decided to go through a transformation, or could be male. Vast variety of different people can be in that party. We welcome them, we welcome everybody. And therefore it's not, just about she or females, it is about everybody who experiences this. Also, I want to make sure that pronouns are respected throughout all the talks, as well as we have people that may not go by what they physically might be. So I'm non-binary, so I go by they, them. And my name's Rianne, so it might be good to invite to do a hello, my name's this, and do your pronouns as well, just so we don't misgender you. That's it really. And if you want to, I've seen with both of you, both our newcomers, that you want to get involved in quite a lot, so that's fantastic, and we'll send you an email with all of that shortly. Yay. And make sure you have read our open rules, our open event rules. Is that it, Val? Have I covered everything?
Yeah, I'm actually going to copy and paste the rules here so that we can read them clearly and nicely.
And then eventually, if you do want to be part of the project and become a participant or a collaborator, then we will send you the GDPR for all of that. At the moment, as it's the open event, you don't necessarily need to do that. Another thing I want to add just quickly, Val, if that's okay. If you do want to talk about sensitive information, that's okay, that's fine. Just be aware that we are in a room with other people here as well. So we all have to respect each other. Also, this is recorded, as you can see in the corner, one of these corners, which means it will be going on our website and will be used for funding purposes in the future as well. If there is sensitive information, we will just quickly say, whilst the sensitive information is happening, that look, we can edit this out, we can take this out, and that is completely up to you. And any information you want taken out that you've said, you can before we submit it. Just send us an email, then we've got the proof there as well. So that's it. Any questions about any of that, just give us a bell, really, because I fixate over things like that. That's my role. So yeah, all right, Val, all yours. I'll be in and out of this talk. So, yeah.
Thank you very much. And as we all know, today Helen will give us a talk about her new project, on endometriosis, and she prepared a lovely PowerPoint. Oh, it says that my internet is unstable. I hope you can hear me all right. And yeah, Helen, please, that's the floor is yours.
Okay, so yeah, thanks for coming. I'm just going to talk today about a project that is like an ongoing project. Just bear in mind, my internet might be unstable as well. So I may have to stop my video, which might help it, but that's just a little warning. Yeah, it's a project that I've been doing or thinking about and doing of over a number of years now, and I'm kind of bringing it all together, and it feels a bit more like a substantial thing now, and I've got a bit more focus on what I'm doing. So I'm going to talk to you about that today. So I'm just going to share my screen. Here we go.
Brilliant.
And I've got notes on my phone, so if I look like I'm not looking properly, then I'm reading my notes. So yeah, so my project is exploring endometriosis through materials. So I don't know whether people have an understanding of endometriosis, but it's a gynecological condition that I think their numbers, they say, is like 10% of people who have periods. This suggests 10% of people who menstruate have endometriosis, and it's a condition where the endometrial tissue of your lining of your womb grows outside of that. So it grows all over, really. It's known to grow onto nerve endings and all sorts of things, but specifically outside of the womb onto ovaries and bowel and all sorts of different areas, and it can cause a lot of pain, and levels of pain can really vary, but it's really underdiagnosed in a way. They say 10%, but I feel like everybody I meet has endometriosis or has symptoms that that suggest endometriosis. So I think it's a lot higher, and the average time for diagnosis from symptoms kind of first being raised either with a GP or acknowledged, I think is between 7 and 10 years, and so it's a difficult to diagnose, but it's also under researched and understood, really, not understood very well. So I think this is like my starting point, really, with endometriosis, and how, as an artist, how I kind of approach trying to understand it a little bit more. So a bit about me. I was diagnosed with endometriosis 7 years ago, and that was probably, I think I worked it out as about 10 years before. My diagnosis was about 10 years after I initially went to a doctor's with symptoms, and my sister already had been diagnosed as well at that time, so I was pretty convinced that I had it, but it wasn't acknowledged, and it wasn't diagnosed till about 10 years later. And I found that even though I was aware of what endometriosis was, I found it really difficult to kind of navigate the medical world, really. There was a lot of appointments, a lot of scans, a lot of uncertainties, I was 35 at the time, 34, 35. So I was a bit worried about like fertility and things like that. So there was a lot of like anxiety around this. Consultancy appointments, talk of surgeries, all sorts of different things. And I couldn't really relate to the medical language or the descriptions of endometriosis. And I read about it and I felt like I understood it. And I always feel like even when people say it now, like, what is it? And I'm a bit like, what is it again? It's a really hard thing to understand when you're experiencing something that you can't see. I think that's something that a lot of people can relate to in different ways as well. So I wanted to try and find a way of understanding what was happening in my body in a way that I could relate to as well, in a language that I could understand a bit more. So I started working with materials. So as an artist, this is my language. So I worked with like clay, with stitch, with plasticine, with anything that I could make an impression on or an impact onto. And I didn't do this as artwork. I did it more as an expression, and of like messing and exploring and trying to figure something out. And in a way, trying to find agency in it all, because I felt really unempowered, disempowered at that point. And I think being able to work with materials made me feel like I had an ability to make a transformation of some sort. I couldn't do it with my body, but I could do it outside of that. So that was quite an important thing, and it's become much more of an important thing as I've returned to the things that I was doing all those years ago, and things since. It's become a really important point, not something I really necessarily realized at the time, but I did feel very powerless within my body and within the medical world that I was trying to suss out. And this was a way of me trying to regain that sense of power or agency of some sort. So I've got this quote: materials are always in a state of becoming entangled and vibrant in vibrant webs of relations with their own ecologies and politics. And I think this kind of helps me to sort of think about why materials and what the interest is in materials. This idea of them always becoming, I think, is really an interesting thing, especially when your body, you may feel very stuck in something and unable to affect change in that way. So feeling powerless in the things that you can't affect in your body, but being able to work with matter that you can affect is quite a powerful thing. And I do like the idea that the materials have their own relationships as well. It's something that I'm kind of trying to kind of get my head around a little bit. But they have lives beyond which we engage in. So I'm trying to understand my body through these materials and trying to tap into a language that's based on feeling, on material properties, and on our relationships, like the relationship with material and the body, sort of outside of the body. So that's just a bit of something about materials and materiality. So a couple of years ago, I got involved in a project called The Language of Endometriosis. And this was a project that was started by Dr. Stella Bullough and her colleague, Zoe Bibbin. And they're based in Manchester at Manchester Metropolitan University in the Linguistics Department in Humanities. And I also work at that uni. I'm a technician there in the art school. So I kind of linked up with them through that, and it was the project is around around the idea that maybe part of the struggle for diagnosis is that people don't have the words to describe the pain, and that if we could find the words and find commonalities in the language that's used, then that might help GPs to identify at an early stage the kind of endometriosis full stop, like their kind of trigger words maybe. So that's part of the project that Stella is doing, and it's an ongoing project. And we got talking, and I was really interested in the things that I'd been making, not as objects, but just like I say, the way that, you know, working with them, making impressions, doing actions, different things was helping me to sort of understand my body. And we discussed how doing that could help potentially people find the language as well, and the way that happens a lot of the time when you're making, you can talk, it's like an easier way, like facilitates talking as well, so you can talk through what you're making and maybe be a little bit more aware of tapping into those things that you might not have acknowledged. So so we put together a couple of workshops for people who suffer with endometriosis to work with different things. We worked with things like plasticine, and we had all sorts of things like cotton wool and balloons and tights and metal bits and all sorts of things, just to give people a range, like you know, enough of a range of materials to try to think about how their pain affected them and how they could in some way describe that. So for me, it was really interesting because it was interesting to see that non-verbal side of things. But for the project, it was really interesting because people came out with quite considered things to say. And I mean, some of the work was just gorgeous. I don't have any photographs of it because it was confidential and just for their project, but yeah, some of the things were just incredible, and the things that people talked about, it was pretty good. So yeah, so that kind of formulated a little bit more in my mind, like this, like honing in this idea of like, this is actually quite important, this idea of working with materials. Since that point, I've been just doing some work myself, what I call like material experiments, and I've also been collecting images. So there's like two sort of strands to it really. On the left hand side here, there's an image that I took at a mill, and it's of some weights on a loom, and they've got some yarn attached to them, and they're under a lot of pressure, and they're really solidly in place, they're really fixed in place. And I just had this like real I almost cried when I saw this. It's such a strong an emotional response to it, and I took photographs of it, and it really stayed with me. From that point I was like, I need to collect more of these kinds of photographs that, I mean, it's not specifically materials in terms of like, this is about objects really, but like it was about the weight of these objects, and this being very fixed and stuck in a place, and the tensions that were being pulled from it. And it was all of these things that were happening all at once that just really made a big impression on me. And I started to collect imagery that I had those kinds of responses to. So whilst in the same breath I was doing that, I was also working with different kinds of materials in different ways, and using different actions to try to start to describe those things as well. So on the right hand side, there's a photograph of a carding brush. So there's two carding brushes exactly the same. And what carding brushes do is you will take excuse me, wool fibers, and you'll brush them out, and the carding brush itself, it's like got pins, and it's quite it feels like quite medieval or something. So they work against each other, and they pull out the fibers, so you end up with like a very soft felted kind of material at the end of it. And I've been using it with like waist yarn, with like waist knit and things like that. So these fibers really pull, and because they're already knitted, you wouldn't normally use carding in this way, but they're so the action of it is quite intense. It's quite violent in a lot of ways. Like, it tears the fibers, and it stretches, it grabs hold of these fibers, but then the material that you're left with is really soft and quite gentle and quite tender, and it kind of makes me think of all these contradictions of feeling, of experience, of sensation that you can get, where something can be, you can be in a lot of pain, do that. In the middle, I've just got a little bit of a film clip as well. And this is like part of these kind of little clips of film that I've been making as well. And this is like a balloon. It's got lots of double-sided sticky tape on it, and it's just like sticking and then being pulled apart and being sort of torn apart. And even the sound feels quite important as well. So a lot of the time things are stuck inside and things feel like they're being prized apart. I think you can hear the leaf blower in the background as well. That's a good sound. And even when it like shrivels back up again, I think there's something in that as well. So yeah, so these are some of the material experiments that I've been doing. Oops. And then I've just started very recently, I've started doing some collage pieces. So I've got a lot of photographs, found photographs, like I say found photographs, they're photographs I've taken, then they're things that I have found in amongst life. Sometimes it's more like industrial kind of imagery. Sometimes it is just dependent on what I'm drawn to in terms of different textures or different tensions, different things happening, and then some of the material experiments that I've been making as well and photographing. So putting these things together and seeing what happens. So using collage as a method of like, you know, it disrupts a narrative, but it also offers alternative ways of viewing things. And I think that's the important element for me, is like, it's an alternative way of trying to understand this condition. So there's a few collages here that I've got, which also like pain generally, but you know, speaking more specifically about endometriosis pain, is like is something that is not just one thing happening at one time, and it's not just one type. When I say it's a squeeze, it might be a squeeze that's got like pins attached to it, or sometimes it's slightly a different squeeze. It's more of a pull and a squeeze. Sometimes it's also happening at the same time as things feel like they're all expanding. And so there's various different layers of things happening like simultaneously. So I think this is another thing that I'm trying to do with some of these images, and also some videos that I've been doing, is try to like use multi-layers to think about different things that are happening simultaneously. So the idea behind this is wanting to put these images together into some sort of publication, some sort of zine, or something like this, to distribute to, well, specifically to go to my old GP surgery, and to give the staff there an alternative view of endometriosis, and something that they can hopefully understand in a different kind of way outside of the medical field and the medical way of talking about it and looking at it and thinking about it, that actually it's a different view. From an experience point of view, I might not be able to say all these things, but and other people might not be able to say these things, but this is an alternative view of what people might be experiencing and why they might not be able to say these things, with the idea that's just to give them a wider view of trying to approach it differently, or be more mindful of diagnosing. Of diagnosing the condition. And yeah, so this, I'm just going to end with this. So this is a little video that I've done, which again, I've got some ideas of where I want to go with this, but I'm sort of a bit too premature to say, but I think it's really important, because pain is, whilst static images can be really effective, pain is an action. So I think, you know, video is really important in this. It's only a really tiny video, but again, it's that like dual thing. It's like two things happening at once, and that's the idea of like trying to layer these things up. So all of these images and stuff, they're all quite unworked, still sort of sussing things out. And yeah, whilst I'm not a massive fan of like final things or outcomes or like end results, they're all kind of experimentations on something that are going to develop further. So I'm going to stop that share now.
Thank you, Ellen. That was really, what touched me the most, it was the video of the balloon. That kind of squeeze, the noise of crackling, it really, I don't know, I felt it in my right ovary, which is, I think, is ever so small than the left one. I perceived this, so I think it's correct. And I had a question. I was thinking of how, if it is possible for specific objects or specific materials to represent a specific type of pain, and if this is transferable, so if it is resonates the same way for all of us, because that, if that's the case, or for the majority of people, if that's the case, then you have found the language to communicate pain, which we know that is, we personally have this scale 0 to 10 or even 50, but then it's unrelatable to other people.
I think that's it. I think it's really, it's not what I'm setting out to do in a way. And I think what I found by speaking to people, and what is actually quite fascinating, and I think it's something that I want to go into a little bit more, is every person has a really unique way of viewing their experience. And while there are crossovers, because not so much in the research that I've done, but being party to some of the research that Stella did with the language of endometriosis, there was definite crossovers in some of the imagery and some of the types of words that people said. I think for me, it's more about that. There's a like when I talk about the image that I saw, that I took a photograph of with the loom and the weights, like there was just a really instinctive response to that, and that could be very different to somebody else's instinctive response. And I think that's really important. It's more about knowing your body, and I don't know your body, but I don't really know mine, to be honest. But I want to know it more, and I think by listening to yourself, to not feel intimidated by the medical world, where you can maybe feel a bit disembodied, to try to reclaim that back in a narrative that you can understand. And it might not be materials with some people, but yeah. Sorry, did somebody, Letitia?
Yeah, I was really interested in what you said about taking it back to your doctor's practice, because I have MS, and there's a language of MS that a lot of us are familiar with. So like the walking through treacle, the cotton wool brain, but that's terms that are very well known within people with MS, so they can use that as a shorthand to explain. So I think if that language isn't common within people that have endometriosis, it must be so much harder to explain.
Yeah, I think there are. I think between people that do similar to maybe yourself, like there are certain things, but then your interpretation, like I don't want to talk too much about my sister because obviously she's not here, but just that she's old, and my older sister, and she used to talk about a dragging pain. And so I used to think, I don't have endometriosis, I don't have this dragging pain, I don't know what that is, I don't understand it. And now I go, oh, I just never would have called that a dragging pain.
Yeah.
And I think that's the difficulty sometimes. And I've heard many people sort of say certain things, and I think I like there are certain shorthand things, but I think they don't. There's a gamut of experiences, and I think it is quite tricky to pinpoint.
But yeah, I was going to say I really like the idea that for people that are perhaps not so verbal but more visual, if that not shorthand, but today I feel a lot of this. You can point to something. Yeah. It's really, really interesting idea. I really like. Well, I don't like the fact that you need it, but I like the approach that you're taking.
Thank you. Yeah, I think there is just like that. Yeah, there's not everything is able to be described by language, and there's a lot of experiences that are quite silent experiences as well. And there's one thing that always sticks in my mind, and I think I've said this to Anna actually before, like that that pain is described in non-verbal language. It might be like you hurt yourself and you go, you don't talk in like in terms, you talk in noises at that point. So like it's not, so maybe language is not, it's maybe not the definitive way to express it or understand it, maybe.
Yeah, Anna, please.
Hey, I'm Anna, she, her. I just wondered, like Helen, when I was like watching the video, particularly with the balloon, and it was giving me this kind of real sort of cathartic feeling, like a kind of like an anger. Do you know, like by recreating those kind of like the idea of actually doing the what you were talking about, the carding as well, like, you know, dragging, like to actually kind of physically recreate the kind of the horrors of the internal squidge fest that's going on, do you actually kind of like, do you get a sort of like a release in terms of like, you know, because you're getting to almost like redo it, you can kind of pound out that frustration in a way? Because I'm kind of getting that feeling. I'm just wondering whether or not you get a kind of like an actual physical like, yeah, like you actually just kind of like.
Definitely. To be honest, weirdly, I used to get it. I did a piece of work a long time ago, and this was like, I feel like now I have had surgeries, and I've my pain is a lot less, and I do suffer more with, like Letitia said, cotton wool brain, and I'm having a little bit of that today as well. But when I was fully experiencing the worst of the pains that I had, I was making a garment. It was like a boiler suit that I wore and that I'd stitch into while I was wearing it, and just kind of locate. It was, I think it was before I got diagnosed, if I'm honest, or it was around that time. I think I was still having like scans and all sorts of different things, but I hadn't been diagnosed. But I was kind of pretty convinced, but it hadn't quite happened. And so it was like locating different areas that I was feeling sensations, and I was doing a lot of stitching, and I found stitching was the most violent thing and the most cathartic thing that I did, much weirdly more so than the carding and the really like horrific kind of actions, maybe because I could be really aggressive with it and a really repetitive with it. I don't know, there was something about it that was really cathartic, and I think there's totally that the scope to feel that, definitely. But I think that's part of the empowerment thing as well. It's about doing the thing and not having the thing happen to you, and being in control of when you do the thing as well. I think those are
I found it quite I find that quite an odd reaction that I'm having towards it, because the idea of like wanting to sort of almost recreate that pain, the violence of that pain, but it's like an anger towards it in a sense, but also like it's like you're actually wanting to become the violence that's being done onto the body in a sense. Like it's a kind of, that's a strange feeling. Like it's almost like you do, it's like the opposite of wanting to be soothed. It's like you want to scratch your nails through, you know.
But then I think that's like, it is important when you do feel something like that. I think it's it kind of makes you aware of like the significance of it and the impact, because I think this is a really interesting thing about endometriosis, is it has a really significant impact on your life. And I was asked that question in my conversations with Stella when she was doing interviews with people with endometriosis, and she asked me, has your life been impacted by endometriosis? And instantly I said, no, not really. No, I mean, I've had some days off work and stuff like that, but and I suppose, yeah, I do choose to do certain things on certain days, and keep certain weeks free, and yeah, well, I don't go for like long walks because I get leg pain, and yeah, and this, you know, certain things that I wouldn't do intimately at certain times, or yeah, and there's certain thing, and then you go, oh yeah, it has been impacted actually. And I think that's another thing of probably a lot of conditions that people suffer, where you don't have a physical, you know, you don't have that thing that you can point it out to people, or I don't know how other people feel about that. But
the other difficult thing is you don't know how your life would be if it wasn't impacted. So you know, how do you know?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, we live our life with our pains and our cycles as they happen. And it's only when something changed drastically, in good or bad, that we can see the difference of how much or how little life was impacted by it.
But I think there's also something about a diagnosis. And I think like up until 35, I didn't have a diagnosis for that thing. So it was always or you're just a bit funny with food, like I'm having one of those weird days. This is a little bit, no, don't come near me. Like, I don't go near my belly, like whatever it is, I don't know. I've just something, and I think a diagnosis is really important in putting things into order, and being able to go, right, that's the reason why I don't do that at those times, and those are so you can kind of see like the implications, I suppose, of that thing, and yeah, how it kind of happens in your life.
I think there's a big problem, isn't there, as well, about how everything just gets written off as sort of like bad periods, or just kind of like, you know.
But even a bad period, you think you
sort
shouldn't
of just dismiss kind of like thing, and obviously it doesn't only affect women, like cis women, but it's like, you know, just that they kind of, this just gets dismissed instantly as just, it's just that. Like,
yeah, I think there's an expectation, isn't there? There's an expectation of pain, and I always think that that's like a really hard thing for all people to kind of get their heads around. I think it's like the importance of understanding what is normal for you and what is not normal for you. And this is what I mean, going back to that thing of like trying to understand your body and trying to understand what's happening with your body is to understand what's normal and what's not normal, and how, because things are changing all the time, like your cycle changes all the time, and that's a normal thing that happens, and that might be something to do with circumstance, age, whatever it is. Different things are happening, but when things are not going right, to be told that pain is just pain, and there isn't a differentiation in pain, and that there's an expectation that you will have pain, so it doesn't mean anything. I think that's
to know
really
kind of almost what to expect and what's within the normal remit. And I mean, as Helen already knows, like I went to the doctor because I was like literally being bedridden for 3 days, literally couldn't use my legs because my periods were so painful. And I went to the doctors and I said, I've got really painful periods. And he said, sounds like you've got painful periods. I was like, no, I've just told you I've got painful periods. But I think the painful periods, they don't seem normal to me because I can't walk. And he was like, yeah, painful periods, here's some painkillers. And it was just but I was like, this is not a diagnosis. I told you painful periods. You just said to me painful periods. It's like, it's not it doesn't feel like a thing to me.
That's a language thing though, isn't it?
Yeah.
He hears period pain, so it's period pain. Not during my periods I'm experiencing hugely excessive pain, which means I'm debilitated to the point that I can't walk, which is what you're saying. Using their language.
I was reading a paper about this problem of communicability, or actually incommunicability between doctor and patient, and the term used in medical websites and such, that of course, because there isn't a scale of pain that can be the same for everyone, there is immediately a sort of lack of interest, it seems, or everyone said, oh yeah, it's all right, period is painful, just it's normal, and there isn't an interest by the surgeon, by the doctor, to investigate more. And I've noticed, I originally come from Italy, and the medical visits that I've experienced there are totally different. So the doctor actually touch your body in specific points and asks you, is it painful here? And actually they ask you to come there when you have got the period. So there are more probability that you experience that kind of pain, either than you just go there when you are able to. And I feel, of course, because pain is internal and it cannot be photographed, there is no way to show them, look, I am dying. Shall I take a video of me dying and I show you how I am in a normal day? How can I communicate that with you? So yeah, but
the idea of like, I think trusting people as well, I think this is where it's really difficult, like the medical kind of, and I don't want to suggest or no one should go to the doctors or anything like that. I really don't want to say that, or that it's all really bad, but just I think as a generalization, I think to feel that you're not being listened to or not being acknowledged, and it also comes down to research as well, and to sort of know how little research is done on female bodies, because they're apparently complicated. It's like it's not really good enough, and then it becomes really much more extreme, and that trust element when you're kind of talking about BAME people as well. So I think this idea of trust and medicine is massive, and they really need to work on that. Being listened to is so important.
I always felt that as a patient, you need to know more than you do know before going to the doctor, so that you can ask all the questions you need to know to understand and communicate. But
you need to be prepared to fight as well, and I think that's
a strange thing, like to work yourself up in a sort of like, right, I've got my dissertation, I've got my everything's written down, so I can't be like thrown off course, like everything's kind of like, and I'm there and I'm ready to go, like, no, like, you will scam me, and then they go, oh, it's just nothing, and you're like, and the part of you wants to hear
exactly
it's nothing, so you go, oh, okay, it's nothing, bye. Like, and then you leave and you're like, that wasn't.
My mum used to be she was director of like the NHS, and she actually told me that if a health professional refuses to give me some sort of treatment or a scan or whatever, I need to ask them to specifically put their name down on my register or my form or whatever, stating that they have refused a certain treatment. And that's like kind of a way to twist it round, to hold them responsible for anything that might happen in the future, which was really good advice. But then it was also really messed up to hear my mum giving me that advice, like, here's a hint, in our industry. That's so messy. Like,
yeah,
it is exactly that. And I think that's the thing, is like, like I had my sister who totally blazed a trail for me, who is a very different person, who's very like assertive, and really kind of, as soon as she found out, she was like, books were out and everything was like, she knew everything about it, and I'm not that kind of person, and I definitely didn't approach it aggressively, and I had many GP's appointments where I was like told, you're not, it's not that, we're not going to do anything about it, and I was like, great, brilliant. I'll just go over here then, at least I don't have it. And then I think it is kind of opening a can of worms, and it is entering into that like system of referrals, and really, I mean, this is where I kind of feel like this is where the work comes in a way. Like, as much as the work is there's so many different things going on. There's my exploration of what's happening with myself, and like Anna says, like there's an element of a therapeutic kind of experience there as well. Some sort of cathartic experience there, but then there's also this other side of things which I really want to be about within the medical world. I want it to be placed within the medical world, and I'd like to have some of these videos, like, I don't know how it could be or what, but I used to sit in waiting rooms, and it was like the worst place. If I could just walk through that door, I would have done. And the consultant that I wanted to see was always the most popular consultant. So I'd wait for 5 hours, and then they'd say at the end of the day, they'd be like, you can't see him. Like, there's no, you have to see a registrar, and I'd be like, no, I'll carry on waiting. and I'd go in there pumped, like you say, Anna, like I'd be like, yes, I've got my script, I'm focused, I know what I want to say, I've got questions, I've got a book that I'm going to write things down. I'm going to say to him, can you just stop and let me write this down and then carry on, and then I'm going to do all of these things, I'm going to be in control of this situation. And then like 5 hours into a waiting room, I've lost myself. I don't know who I am anymore. I genuinely don't know what I am anymore, and I've not spoken for 5 hours either. So you know, like you lose your nerve and you go in and you just like, I just want to get out. I want you to not say bad things, and I just want to go home and have a brew and probably a cry. And it's like, it's the hard thing about that. So I feel like that waiting room, there needs to be something in there. I don't know whether art is the thing, but it just keeps coming back to me.
I think they need to play Eye of the Tiger, like on loop.
You know,
it's true though, it is like, it's a total emotional labor, and then when you get in there, this feels like so much responsibility to deliver on this real authentic experience that you don't even know how to word, like your whole point is, Helen. And then there's also a lot of gaslighting in that situation where you feel, oh, are they even going to believe me? And then there's even in the back of your head, am I being hysterical about this?
Absolutely.
That feeling when you like, God, I'm making a big fuss out of this. Oh, I get on all right. It's only 3 days in bed.
Yeah.
You know what you've said about this,
get out of there as soon as possible. That's the other thing, is you don't want to be there. You don't want to be there, and you kind of don't want somebody to say awful things to you either. So it's such
missing the words. You know, you've mentioned this script. I completely see myself in there, because I do have a script when I go to the doctor with all the questions, but also with phrases that I prepared before to explain what I've got. And I go there, you know, I am Italian, so for me already being nervous to a doctor that I don't know, and it's uncomfortable already. So I've got there with my script, and when I went to a private doctor to see about, I thought I had endometriosis, so I needed to check. So I went through the pandemic, which of course is unpleasant to be in a hospital during a pandemic already, but they were very clean, and I was the only one in the waiting room. And I went there with my book with all the questions, and I think I've spent there half an hour, which is a very long time according to GPs, because I was telling her I need to write down everything I have to, because my mother is a doctor. This is always what I said is true. So she wants to know exactly what the doctor said. So I have to write it down. But then I felt very in charge of what I needed to know from this doctor. What's the strategy? I want to know from day one, which is today, what will happen later? What's the strategy that you're going to put into place? I don't want to discover this from time to time, every 100 pounds at a time. I just want to know today. But it was something she wasn't used to. I could tell she was backing up in the chair. But then I don't want to exaggerate when I am there, but sometimes in the past I had to.
I think you should.
They didn't want to give me a specific blood test to see if there were endometriosis cells in the body. And I knew I could have it because it's my right to have it. I was very happy to pay if I had to go down the route. And my GP didn't want to give it to me, even if the gynecologist accepted my request. And I've said, look, one of my aunts has died because of cancer in the ovaries. So would you please check? And my nan, they had to remove the womb. So would you mind just check? Oh, we didn't know that. You never ask, for example.
Yeah.
So there is a presumption. And I wasn't a fighter in the doctor room before coming to the UK. Since I'm here, I have to go there with all my weapons and kind of charging them more than accepting their response. And it's very, very unsettling. And even now I am building up again this rage that I had 5 or 6 months back, and not knowing for sure if you have it or not, and being in this wait for months on, oh well, we don't know when we can do whatever. And I know, I think it was you, Helen, that said that, but I think I know that the only way to see if you've got endometriosis is with the laparoscopy, which is something which is a very invasive surgery. For those who don't know, they cut to the belly and they put a camera in on a kind of stick, right? And of course, in a pandemic, it's not the best moment in general to have this type of surgery. But in general, it is absurd that that's the only way that they found. But then what about this blood test that they had, that they can see if there are cells in the body which are endometriosis cells? That should be
about that.
right. You know what? I knew that because of an Italian doctor, because I was, I called my gynecologist in Italy, and I told her about the situation, and she said, right, do this blood test, and which, if you want, I can re-find the note, because it's a series of numbers, effectively. I don't know what's in there. But then, oh goodness, and I still don't know. And my doctor, her sort of response, we did a scan to see if there was anything in the womb, but nothing showed up. And it wouldn't, right? It wouldn't. So I kind of spent money like that.
I always think the scan's like a bit of a sort of
just pat you on the head.
Do something. You've had it.
Like a little potty. Yeah, I felt the same way. But then they didn't want to give me the results effectively. So I had to call the surgery, request for it, and they send it to me with a DVD. Okay.
DVD.
A DVD. I might find a way to see that in a future. But yeah, there are a series of things that you either have to know everything, or you will miss out.
Yeah, and I think there's another thing about going in there with knowing that for me, I was on the NHS, and so knowing that I'd waited probably 3 months for that appointment, and if I was to have another appointment, I'd have to wait probably another 6 months. So like, I've got to get everything out of this. And I'd always come out like, I never asked that. I never even would even open my notebook. I would just go in there and feel that that power relationship.
Yeah.
And just feel like I'm not, it's such an established relationship that I would just always feel quite undermined. And even though I really rated my consultant, he was great, but in the same breath, it was just, I was always going to feel intimidated in that situation, and I was always going to struggle to sort of do all the things that I'd prepared to beforehand. And I think that's probably quite a common experience.
I was talking to a friend yesterday about this, about a different scenario, but about adopting a persona. So not going in as yourself, but going in as somebody that's very forthright and that's going to lay down the law. And even though it's not you, but it's like an act, but it does the job for you.
That's a really good
idea.
Yeah.
It's really funny though, I'm thinking of the training.
Like theatre training.
Yeah. Because I go in with my notebook as well, and I kind of thought, right, okay, I'm a reporter, so I'm gonna ask the questions and get the answers and tick my list off.
My goodness.
Yeah, and I think also sometimes it's going in with somebody else, having somebody else there, and not, like, just, it is like you say, it's just like having training on how to deal with an ongoing condition within. I mean, I was part of my kind of like, I'm done now with this whole thing, was just like, I just want to be out of this system now. I don't want to be doing this anymore. I felt very much like part of this ongoing thing, and no one really knew anything, and I just thought it'd be something that I could go in and get fixed and get on my way. And then you realize that, well, probably bodies are not like that as well. They're not all like easily fixed, and maybe it's a different way of looking at how your body is and how medicine works. But also that, it felt like I was kind of, I called it like I'm in the system. It was like I was in the system and I just wanted to be out of the system, with all the anxiety that provided. And yeah, I'm lucky that I don't have such severe symptoms now that I need to be back in the system. But yeah, I think there's just maybe ways that we can sort of, it's where art comes in as well. And I think that's the thing, is like there is a place for art in medicine, there's a place for art in so many different situations where we're used to just one conversation, and actually there's other conversations to be had. And I think to bring like medical professionals into that, and people who work within medicine, like, you know, when I talk about taking this to my GPs, like I want like the cleaners and the GPs to be able to see it, to know that if somebody is like passed out, you know, just it's just everybody's knowledge within that environment about something that does affect like a hell of a lot of people. And that we are getting more knowledge about, and we are getting more awareness of, but I think
sorry, Helen, I was just going to say, I think it's great because for me, like, it all encompasses like empathy for the situation, and actually like looking at a lot of the works that you've done almost make me feel more empathetic towards myself. And I've not been diagnosed with endo, but I like seriously think I've got it or something along those lines, of which when I've gone to doctors about it, they've dismissed it as, like Anna said, bad period pain and have you tried losing weight and have you tried exercising, all the classics. But actually, like, watching those, I felt so much, like you were saying, emotion looking at them, and kind of like I was like, oh my gosh, like that there's the visual language for like exactly what I felt. That's the thing that I had last month. That's the reason I didn't want anyone touching even like my legs, you know, like not just my belly. Like that's why I didn't want anyone touching my thigh or even like my face. I didn't, and I felt hot and cold. And you were really like giving a language to that. And all of a sudden, like I felt like empathy for myself through it, because I was like, oh, I no longer actually feel, because when it's happening, I feel angry. You know, I'm like, how dare this happen to me? Like, you know, this is shit, you know, like how dare it? But actually, like looking at those images, I was like, oh, that's like a really universal thing where like I don't feel alone in this, and I feel like there's a type of almost community that gets it, and we're all here, and there'll be other people that get it. So I think it's lovely. I think it's really great what you're doing.
Oh, good. I'm really happy to hear that, because I think that's like you really tap into something that I think is something I was speaking to a friend about the other day, and I think it's really important, is like we were talking about this idea of like something like quite violent happening to your body, and you can feel at war or at odds with what's happening, and it might be that it's just not working in the way that you want it to, or it could be about the pain, that like the violence of that, and then there's this kind of other side of things that is about self-care and about different things like this, but there's about like love your body and da 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 da. And we were talking about this, and my friend was like no chance. I can't love my body. I can't love my body that has given me so much pain. Like I cannot love that part of my body. I can't do that. And I was like, yeah, I feel like it's the wrong thing to do. I don't think, you know, like it's like sort of trying to put yourself into another pressurized situation, when actually to understand it, or to feel like you can say something about it, or make something like it's sort of find some way of exploring that a bit outside of your body is not to love your body, but it's just to find some sort of acceptance of it, or like or just at least acknowledgement of it, because like there's a lot of conditions like this, but they're described in medical terms. I think it's in medical terms, I've heard this, as a non-event. Like nothing happens. It's not like you broke your leg or something. I don't know. There's like nothing actually happens. So they're described as non-events. So there's nothing to sort of show for it. There's nothing to even see for it. So they kind of, they can almost be, well, they are not acknowledged a lot of the time, and yet they're significant, and the things that are happening to yourself. So to sort of, for them to be further not acknowledged by yourself, or dismissed, or tried to be put to one side, is to probably to make that situation worse. To try and acknowledge it in a way that's maybe somehow helpful to you. Or
and to like reclaim that, you know, to own it to a degree.
Your way of owning it, but not necessarily because you have to love it. Like,
yeah, and to realize that like you're allowed to be angry at it, and what you're angry at might not actually be yourself and your body, but it might be the system and the lack of help available, the lack of language available. And I think it's a much bigger anger than me and my body, you know.
Exactly, because also I think there is something that happens with a lot of people, a lot of descriptions that people talk about with pain, where they talk about like feeling disembodied. So talking about it as a separate thing, it's separate from your body. It's like, it could be personified, it could be like an animal, it could be, you know, like there's different narratives that people have, which I think are really fascinating, how people use their own like storytelling to describe this.
I like that. I've never thought of it like that, but as you were saying it, I was thinking like, for me it's almost like the narrative of like a visitor, you know, like come in, and I know they're coming because I can see it on the calendar, and I'm like, any day now. And but that build up to that visitor is like just as much anxiety inducing as the actual event, which means you're exhausted by the time it's happening. And it's kind of like it's a really vicious cycle, because like you were talking about going to the doctors, when you go and you want to report it, you're probably so mentally drained after this visitor that you've been waiting for.
Feeling quite good on that day as well, so you're like, fucking great.
Yeah, it's a build up. Depending how soon you know of this visit. It could be that you've been waiting for this 3 months, so you've been preparing yourself for 3 months, and then exhausting, and finally you're sitting there and you've got the mask, maybe, because if it happened now, we had masks and gloves and things, and can I put the coat down on this chair, or would it be completely, I don't know, saturated with COVID stuff? So there is that level of things as well. So when I was in the empty room, I thought, well, okay, maybe if I don't sit, I will worry less, so I can focus more on my speech, sort of thing. Yeah, but then
you're kind of in an awkward position.
But
exactly. But like Anna says, like I've done that before, where I've been like, I'm actually feeling all right today. Like, and also there's a thing where you struggle to remember what that pain, you can remember maybe the story of the pain, but you can't remember the intricacies of it. And then like I write things down, and when I like look back at when I'm actually experiencing it and writing those things down, it's like, oh yeah, I'd forgotten about that, and that bit there. And they're like, because you can't remember pain in the same way that you experience it, so it is a different thing. But yeah, to write things down I think is the key, especially
I do that a lot. I've got this phone app, the Natural Cycles. I've been using for 4 years now, so I don't take any medication for regulating my cycle. I was on a pill before purely because of laziness and being safe, so I could have my relationship nicely and not to worry about being pregnant, because I was young and I didn't want any children at that time. So yeah, and because of that, I've started noting down everything. And the problem for me, it was that when I went to the doctor, because I thought I might have endometriosis, it's because of one specific accident, that on the 1st of August 2020, I had this exceedingly painful pop or something. I don't know what it was. It came in waves, as if I was experiencing some sort of labor. I've never had that, so I don't even know how it feels, but from films, pretty much, I had this kind of pain that was coming up and then jotting down, and I was sweating, cold. I kind of lost a sense of time because I was so much in pain that I was rolling in the bed, and that happened just one in my lifetime. And I thought, that's wrong, but it's not, it never happened before. So I wanted to check that specific thing. And after going to the normal GP and then the gynecologist, I spoke to a homeopathist, and she asked me a level of detailed questions that no one asked me, even down to, how do you like being treated when you're ill? Do you prefer to sort of suffering alone, or do you seek attentions? And I was like, wow, okay, why? I said, because everything matters in these sorts of things, and the level of pain that you experience is apparently based on top of this also. It's not that it's good or bad, but it's a level of understanding totally different from what I knew before. And she said, okay, there are two things, in my opinion, knowing that I wasn't experiencing that pain right in that moment, and also was on the phone. It could have been either a abortion, natural abortion that occurred, and you were expelling it, or it could have been the explosion of a follicle that was forming. And I said, that one. I knew it wasn't abortion because I knew that I had protect sex, so it couldn't happen. But that one, it was like, yeah, that's it. Because I kind of, I didn't feel the pop, but that explanation was perfect. And I wrote to my GP, to the gynecologist, saying, look, I have noticed, I've been given this opinion. What do you think? Oh, why don't you come and we talk about it? No, I'm not going to pay you £100 to come and sit here to say, oh yeah, maybe what the homeopathy said is correct. Thanks. But, yeah. So yeah, there are alternative ways to try and understand what's going on. And even the type of questions that the homeopathists ask, they're weird and interesting and very, they made me center a little more. And she asked me, is this ever happening all the time? How do you feel? How do you feel pain? And is it always on the right or on the left? Is it deep, or is it on the surface level? Is it more towards the muscles of the belly, or is it something very deep internally? Do you feel it in the womb, or is it maybe just on the uterus? And you say, okay, I can actually feel these things.
I think that can be sometimes quite difficult though as well. I think, like, I've definitely had conversations with people before about, like, you know, where do you feel this, and is this and I do get to a point where I'm going, the front bit.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what you're saying now. Like, I can't relate to the things that you're saying, so I'm just saying something. and I have to kind of get to a point where I go, actually, I'm not feeling that at all, so I don't know what you mean. Like, I'm not just going to keep on
bottom half. Do you know?
Yeah. Just me.
It's from about here.
the tip.
Yeah.
Down. My toes are fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Sometimes
this area.
It's such
You
like
remove this.
It's actually such a like
so
the experience is so ephemeral though. Like sometimes
Yeah.
like I'll wake up at like, I don't know, like 4 or 5 in the morning for no reason, and nothing will be happening, but I'll literally be thinking it's coming. Like
Yeah.
like it is coming, like almost feverish.
Yeah.
But I'm not because I'm not hot. I feel fine. I could bob around. It's coming. Like, and I can't. I'm not even in pain, but I know it. It's almost like there's a tingle through my body, and I can't locate it though. I don't know where that is, but it's happening, and it does. It always happens within about 6 hours after that. It's like, yeah, I knew it, but I could never tell anyone that.
I totally know what you mean. Like I have that like. Me and Anna were talking about this the other day, and I was struggling to sort of articulate it really, but like there's like I've got it at the minute because I'm on my period, my first day of my period, so it's not properly got started yet, and I can feel the absence of pain. Like I can feel where the pain should be and will be, exactly where it is and where it should be, but it's almost like I've been numbed, but it isn't. It's just not happened yet, but I'm just so aware of it that it's like the ghost of the pain that's gonna come.
Being haunted by pain when it's not there, but it's like
pain. Yeah, it's so weird. And I couldn't come the other day to meet with Anna on Friday, and I have this like other thing that has been happening like for probably about 6 months, and this is where I always find it again, it's like really good to acknowledge what your cycle is and how it changes and what happens, because I go through blocks of different things, and those blocks might last over a year or whatever. They might just be 3 months, but like there's real blocks, and I'm in this block at the minute where about 3 days before my period, I have a day or 2 days where I just cannot, like I'm so low energy, but like I can't think straight. Like I'm pushing through to talk and to just anything is just such a struggle. And I was trying to explain it to my partner. I was just like, I feel like I've got loads of people talking in my head and I have to like read a book or something. It's like it's so overwhelming and it's so like overstimulated, and it's too much, and I can't. The idea of like having to talk is just exhausting. Even talking was like slurry. And I find that is actually like one of the worst things that I experience through all of
that happened to me as well, precisely like so 3-4 days before the period, and then is a crescendoing down because it started with the inability to concentrate for me. I can't even, I don't know, do hand things, or I don't know, drawing, nothing. And it's frustrating because in a sense I have no energies, but the mind is almost buzzing, wanting to do things, and knowing that there are things to be done, but then the body's like no. And then the period starts, and usually I have migraines in the 2-3 days before the period starts, and that is the start of the end pretty much. Then I've got 2-3 days of bleeding, no, 3 to 4 days of bleeding, and then it started happening. I mean, the energy started coming back.
Kind of come back a bit.
You find you get clumsy as well, because I just drop things like
I am clumsy by nature, so that's complicated to see different, but
I get so clumsy, literally. Like I think I've told you, Anna, there was a time where I was like emptying the dishwasher and I dropped a glass and broke it, and I was like, that's so unlike me, and I never do stuff like that. I was like, oh, it doesn't matter. Picked up another glass and instantly dropped that, and it's just like, what is happening? What?
Doing? You're just kind of like, you're just dissonant at that point. You're not, you're just not linked up, are you? You're not kind of at the same points. But I feel like after that couple of days I'm fine then, until the last 2 days I've been all right and back on, and then it's like it's today it's like hitting me more. But
can I say credit to you, Helen, for doing this talk on the first day of your period?
It's fine. It's like it is just purely like finding words is the thing.
Yeah. You're doing really well.
A quick note on the work as well, like as well as being like immensely empathetic, like Claire said, and like really visually accurate and feel it also is really weirdly beautiful. It's so I mean, I don't mean weirdly beautiful, I mean it's like aesthetically it's great art. I think it looks
good,
like strong beautiful artwork, but it has this kind of like completely in tune element that's like it zaps straight into my body when I'm looking at it. I feel it undulating, I feel that, but it also is visually just great as well, like the color palette, the the way that you kind of like compose things together. It's like it functions as successful art as well as being a kind of medical practice in a sense.
Yeah, but I want it to be that as well. Like I think it needs to have both contexts, really. Like it has to be art, and it has to be able to sit in like a gallery setting and be somewhere that people can see it and that can understand a different side of things. But I think like my initial thing is about it being something that speaks to the people that suffer with it and the people that can do something about that. And that's the sort of the first, that's my audience. Beyond that,
I feel like it also potentially has an audience for people who don't experience periods. Like one of my pet peeves is like when my partner is trying to help me when I'm struggling with a period, I kind of want him to get it. You know, I'm like, why don't I want to give you this pain for just 10 minutes, not in a malicious way. I just want you to know exactly where it hurts and how I'm feeling so that you can get it. Because he tries to like, he's so nice, but he tries to do things like pat me on the back or, you know, like, and I'm like, just don't, I can't do it. Like, don't touch me, but be here constantly and don't take your eyes off me. You know, like.
Exactly. Be ready because I will call you.
And I feel like I'm actually really excited to show him some of your work because he'll never get it.
No.
But he will maybe get a taster of what it looks like.
Yeah, exactly. I kind of want it to like be the things that like we've encountered, like we encounter things all the time and we learn that language, or you know, we have a relationship with stuff and it's just like putting a big spotlight on that in a way that you might not normally do. That actually, what is that touch and what is it? It's kind of like stringy, but it's also and like acknowledge those things that you just go, oh, a table, or you know, a wire, or you know, whatever it is that like. But what is that table? What is it? Is it hard? Is it soft? Is it scratched? Is it this? Is it that? And so the things that we maybe don't pay that much attention to in terms of materials that we kind of acknowledge, because I think there is like, you know, there is there's scope for things, other conditions that people can understand things with, and there's like lots of different, not necessarily pain, but it's sensations and experiences and different things. Obviously, like there's a massive world of stuff that we can understand through that language, and yes, so it's not just about the subject, but that is my way into that subject.
You like kind of like the Rothko or the sort of Kandinsky of physical feeling, you know, like,
I love that.
You know, like
on my bio.
Yeah, it might be quite a sort of like, I don't know, like patriarchal machismo sort of idea of the kind of expressionist painter or something who kind of like understands deep emotion and expresses deep emotion, but I'm not dismissing that concept. It's just that that's a kind of thing, this the big canvas, and art is there to express, you know, sort of feelings of sexual desire and great anger and sort of death and all this. But you are grabbing onto that principle, but it's physical
Yeah,
it is emotional, but it's kind of
it is emotional though as well. I think that's the thing, is that they're
material.
wrapped together, and they're you like I to kind of go, oh, that symbolize, like that says to me something about tightness, isn't just, oh, that says to me something about tightness. It's like, oh, that feels like tightness. So it's like, it's a sensation, and it's also, well, what that makes me go, you know, like that there is like emotion there as well, like, because it's like all wrapped up, and I want that to be there, because it is really emotional, isn't it? And it's so intertwined with that, and you can't unwrap that, you can't pull that apart. But it's also like about being, it's also about, for me, it's about craft as well. It is about like, it's about the practices of craft within that as well, and how important that is to play about with, that they're things that people have a relationship with, and not a hierarchy with, hopefully. But like, yeah, that people already have a relationship with materials, so it's not an obscure language.
Yeah, so that they can immediately relate, because at least they've seen it once, they've touched it once.
Yeah,
Like
it might remind,
tactile.
yeah, exactly. You
Mm.
can maybe imagine feeling that texture on like your nana's couch, or
Yeah.
like, you know what I mean, like there's maybe associations attached to those things, or like, you know, a rock. I've got like things I don't think you're meant to take from the beach, but like I did, and so yeah, like things that you see, you might have a connection with in some way.
Have you read the book? I think it's called Craftivism.
The Sarah
It's a good
Corbett.
one. Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
I love that.
Great. Yeah, she's really great. I like her. I do like her ethos. In fact, it's funny you say that, actually, and I will show you this, because she did a workshop at the People's History Museum.
Oh wow.
A couple of years ago. She was doing like a bigger, like a whole day thing at the People's History Museum, and I do Fabric of Protest with the museum. So she wanted to see if some of our participants wanted to like volunteer on that day and help out. And so I wasn't going to be able to volunteer, but I was like, I'll come along to your training, like your little workshop kind of training session. And a few of us went down, and it was brilliant. She was great. She was really lovely. And we made these little, her kind of, if you don't know, she does this craftivism, so like craft and activism, and she has a big history of activism. And what I like about her is that she's quite realistic about things as well. And she sort of says it like craftivism is a way of, for her it was like an antidote to burnout of activism, but it's also a way of strategizing. So like you sitting stitching a message or something like that might not in itself do massive amounts, but whilst you're doing that, you're thinking about that issue, what might you be able to do, what might make a difference, or even to strategize like a craft project that could have a real life consequence. So it's a really nice way of putting things together. So she did this thing which was I dare to dream, and I put I don't know if you can see that properly, but of more understanding of women's health. And it was she had this thing of like, we're not going to put something like a negative thing. It's not going to be like, you know, these people need to stop doing this, or, you know, like it was always about a sentiment that could actually enable change, and not just be about, no, that can't happen, that, you know, that should stop. It was like, what's the alternative? And like that enables you to kind of open yourself up a bit more. And so it took me ages to kind of get my head around that, because I was like, no. No. But I have it up here, and that did actually make me think about this project in that way.
That's a beautiful thing. Is it Sarah Corbett? Did I I put a link.
Yeah, Sarah Corbett.
Brilliant.
Yes, have you put a link up?
Yeah, I just wanted to double check if it's the
that's
right
it.
one. I
Yeah.
think it is.
Yeah.
This project, I dare to say, seems so strong in a sense, because of course, before you said that it needed to be a positive message, I would have been like, yeah, as you said, immediately kind of more, yeah. It's harder in a sense to think positively.
But I think it's like, it's about taking the emotion out of it in a way and thinking, and similarly, like that's kind of what I'm trying to do with like this. I wrote a letter to my GP the day after I had surgery for my endometriosis. I wrote a letter to my old GP who didn't listen to me and who I had to leave that surgery to go and get somebody who did listen to me. And I wrote this letter. I've not actually looked at it since, because I wrote this letter so many times in my head, so many, like, over the years, and then eventually wrote the letter and didn't want to do anything with it there and then. It was just like, just write it, just get it all out. I didn't even think about it. I just literally, the day that I came back from the hospital, I just it just all came out, and then just left it there, knowing that at some point I'll do something with it. And it's something that just comes up every now and again, like, what am I going to do about this? What am I going to do with that letter? What am I going to do? Something has to happen. And then I think it's like I'm a believer in things just taking their time and finding the right time for different things, and just felt like I got to a point where this work feels like the right outlet. It doesn't feel like just a letter that someone will more than likely dismiss, and I'm sure that the zines will be something that people will dismiss in a lot of ways, or could do, but there's more in it, and there's more of a potential for a conversation, at least, whereas a letter that's me going rah, is about me and not about change and not about them, and it's probably very hard to do anything with, really. So at least this feels productive, and it feels like it's actually a conversation that could be had there.
Yeah, this is like the worst comparison ever, but Judge Judy.
Yeah.
I know you're loving it anyway.
Loves that program. It's always on.
I call her like, Judy and Executioner.
That's brilliant.
So I think a lot of the time it's a load of rubbish, but I actually really love her nature, because you can tell she's like a real person with real lived experiences. She has her own family. Every now and then a bit of emotion comes out, but actually her job is just to say how things are in the law, and she just says it, and like she removes herself from all emotion. And I actually think that's a real skill. Like she's so good at that. And I think that's exactly what you're doing. You're almost like intermediate between the real lived experiences of these things and the reality that is healthcare that doesn't listen to that properly, and you have to find like a balance between that, kind of like the messenger with no emotional attachment.
Stays emotive and stays understanding, so it doesn't become cold, harsh medical ideas, because obviously if you are in the medical profession, you are feeling stuff for people every day, but you almost have to get to the point where you probably couldn't feel for every single person who came in through the door, because you'd have those moments where it hits you, but you would literally, I mean, you'd be a mess, wouldn't you?
Yeah, it's too much to take on.
There was a moment in which during my research of finding people to contribute in the project, I've sent an email to a doctor, a gynecologist I've met during the years, and she said, yes, okay, interesting, I can come in. And then I gave the information about what I thought it was important to discuss in an open-ended talk like this one, and then no replies happened. So I think there is a terror probably,
the
doctor to face the people, because most certainly there won't be a balance of emotions. I perceive that if people were able to talk face-to-face or Zoom face-to-face to a doctor, that could be too much attack in a sense.
I agree, but I also think there's like, I think I did this. I mean, I was drunk one time, and it was like a friend of a friend who was like, and it was around that time that I think I'd been diagnosed by then, so I had a lot of anger. And a friend of a friend, we were out, and they were she introduced this guy, and he was a GP, and I was just straight in there. I was straight in there, and he just shut down, and I thought, this is entirely inappropriate time wise. This is like not the right setting or I mean, I was making a joke out of things, but I was like, you lot need to buckle up. And I just thought, you get this all the time for various different things. Like, you have a life where as soon as somebody realizes you're a GP, people are like, right, have you seen this? Or and I just think like they kind of almost can't exist in real life. I don't know how they do it. So I'm definitely not unsympathetic to them. And I think it'd be really hard to find somebody who would come onto a forum like this, and almost like, I'm not sure whether I could trust myself to not be like what? Like, what's going on with this? I think it's really hard. And I don't know what the answer to that is either.
Well, I think after today, and especially because we're talking about this little part in here, little topic in here, I would I think I'm going to contact back and say, maybe it's best if we do a one-to-one conversation, so that it's not an opening the door to everyone that wants to shop. It's just,
or some questions, put some questions out to people that can be asked on their behalf.
That could do.
I think it not becoming like a surgery, it'd be really
exactly. That would be. My mom is a dermatologist, and she has that from the whole family, and every friend is like, oh yeah, I've got, can you just, it take 5 seconds, but then everyone in the family says, oh, we ask your ma, and she, you can try, but it's upsetting because of course
she's never wrong.
Profession is like giving free consultation all the time, and when they receive a no, it's kind of an offense, and I get that. So even the way I was thinking to or arrange this talk, it was bearing that in mind. But most certainly, I didn't nurture this conversation gentle enough. Probably, I think that I've got in touch with this doctor, as I did with you, for example. So being quite clear in saying, oh, maybe we can talk about that, and staking out a few points that we could discuss. But this is not something they understand or they ever done before. So I have no idea. Maybe they were expecting something like a doctor talk, or is there a doctor talk as we do artist talks where they produce a PowerPoint and they go through things? This is, I don't know. So maybe my strategy now, what I'm thinking to do is to probably make an open call on Instagram and invite people that are studying, that are students in their masters or PhDs, and they're studying to become gynecologists. So maybe even the technicians that do specific, like the laparoscopy, the surgeons who run, right? So yeah, maybe going in that way. And it would be interesting to understand that not the terminology, but how do I approach you?
It seems as though like you're creating a resource, like, you know, this is a recorded talk, you know, that kind of thing. It's a resource. But it seems like if you had people who came, like Helen was saying, if they're actually turn up as a doctor and then they're just in the forum, then they become attacked. Whereas you always wanted them to listen, but they don't have to respond. No one doctor stands for all doctors, and they don't stand for, you know, like they have to kind of take on the kind of like the wrath that people have had experiences with certain people, that they might not want to engage with that, but perhaps are interested to hear or to be invited, but say, you know, come along, you know, like, speak if you want to, but we won't say that you're a doctor, so we won't tell anybody else that we have a doctor here.
That could be a fantastic
You know,
thing.
like, they're kind of anonymous, they're just a person as they are, but they just come,
Yep.
they come in their kind of civilian clothes or whatever, and they just kind of, they can just listen. If they want to contribute, they can, but they don't have to tell people what they do as a job. So it's almost like a secret. Do you know what's that thing where it's like
Secret shopper.
not a secret shopper, the other thing, but I was thinking that,
Secret
like,
millionaire.
secret boss, yeah, secret, like, like, and they ask like what's going
Mystery
on.
diner we had when I was working at the restaurant.
Yeah, like just kind of finding out what people are feeling and thinking and talking about and stuff, without having to sort of be answerable, because as soon as you have to answer for your profession, you're also going to have a lot of, well, you know, we have a terrible time and we don't get enough, you know, resources or whatever. You know, and it's not kind of trying to pit people against each other. It's trying to find a mutual understanding, so that one, I mean, if this blood test, for example, would be a great solution. I mean, how much cheaper surely is a blood test than an invasive surgery to do? You know,
and I've linked an article about this blood test that I've done, and of course it's something that the doctor need to accept for you to do. It's very bizarre to me still, that I had not only to convince the gynecologist to allow me to have this blood test, but also I had to convince the surgery to give me the referral to then go to the hospital and do the blood test. So it was very, kind of laborious process. And I feel most certainly they have got straight rules that they have to comply with, such as if the patient doesn't ask me for that question, I cannot provide information. I don't know if this is at all correct, but I wish there was a handbook for me as a patient that I can read if I want to understand fully how to communicate. And then the other side is the opposite. How can a doctor efficiently understand? And
amazing. That would be amazing. And you'd think that that would be something that's like a fundamental part of... Am I still there?
Yeah,
you are now.
But yeah, that would be so good.
This has been in my mind ever since with Rianne we started talking about this, because I think it's very much directly connected. I started thinking actively about womanhood and discussing about menstruations and menstrual cycles in June or May. And then this episode of probably popping of follicle happened in August. And then I was in the cycle. How did you describe it before, Ellen? Being in the system? I felt it. It's something that haunted me, because I was in the waiting list, waiting for phone calls and having, oh God, I had this anxiety building up, and even driving to the hospital. Oh my goodness, it was horrible. And I'm finally, I can say I'm out of there. Finally, it lasted very kind of a few months, but yeah.
And I suppose maybe worse because of COVID as well.
Yeah, exactly. But then I was only able to get out there early because I had the finances to cover that, only because I had this kind of pot of money. Say, all right, I'll dedicate that for the doctor. But this idea of the handbook, it started emerging when I was in the hospitals and waiting rooms and in the system of being trying to communicate and studying how am I going to tell them, because there is a specific word for everything in medical terms. So for example, sometimes I've been suffering pain during sex, so I thought that was crucial, and that's called dysmenorrhea. It doesn't even make sense.
That's not specifically that word though. That's the word for bad periods. Because dysmenorrhea is like the word for like extreme periods like extreme pain during periods. So they can say that you suffer with dysmenorrhea.
Yeah, you're right.
Because of endometriosis.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, that is one of there's like there's specific things that if you say, they will listen to you more about endometriosis, and one of them is pain during sex. But
Yeah.
you don't necessarily have to suffer that to still have endometriosis. To be fair, you don't even need to have pain to have endometriosis, and that's the other thing. It doesn't link up to how much the pain doesn't necessarily. You could have a tiny smattering and be crippled in pain. You could have it everywhere and not really feel anything, which is the difficulty with endometriosis.
You're right. I just confused.
But I think consistently people have a
problem
type of pain.
I've just confused the dysmenorrhea, because I know now that you've said that dysmenorrhea is actual pain during menstruation, the cycle, I realize, oh yeah, that's true. But we don't use this terminology now. So probably I might have
I can't even say it properly.
Yeah.
I have to say it. I have to say it in the Italian way because it's kind of Latin, so they will understand. But how we are as patients, we are we need to know these sort of things to come across correctly. If we don't, we just use various terminology. And something I've started doing very, very actively is asking the paperwork before during my whole trial. I want to have their documents that you can request, and this is something I've only knew because I ask like very, very straightly, because I want to read what they say. And that has taught me the language I need to use. So I've checked, and sometimes they've mistaken things because I go and check every term and what they mean, and they were mistaking because I didn't have dysmenorrhea. I had period during sex at times, which is called or something else. And so if you have the kind of possibility to check the records, there are more possibilities that you understand better.
That's a good point.
Right?
Yeah, because like they do give you that option sometimes. Like, do you want the letter in the post, of like the review or whatever? I usually say no to that, but I have a friend who's actually, you might really like her, Helen. She has an Instagram page called Queens of Eve, which is about her own like gyno problems where she tears a lot, and there's literally like no one's diagnosing her. It's been going on for like years. Anyway, she got her letter and it said that she had a broken leg.
Oh,
yeah, like they totally like wrote down the completely wrong thing, like they've just ticked any box. But it was in the same what do you call it, like consultation as they completely ignored her in. So she went, said everything. They were like, oh, come back in a few months. And then she was like, I want a write-up of this through in the post. And then when it came through, they were like, broken leg, like quite severe. I shouldn't laugh because it's actually terrible, but
Quite severe.
Yeah, I know. And this is, I had to call them so many times. I had to call them so many times. I've actually put the link of Queens of Eve on the chat. So yeah, I had to call them so many times to say, where are my referrals? I want all of the documents of everything that we've been discussing. And I had back and forth quite a few times because they mistaken the GP surgery. They sent it to the previous one once. And then the doctor that they referred, it wasn't my GP. It was the GP of the surgery that I've never even met. So I went back to them maybe 5 times saying, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. And the difference between period during sex and actual period during cramps and menstrual pain. So it was, guys, just pay attention to what he said.
It feels a little bit like there actually would be a complete opening for a job of being almost like a lawyer for people going into doctors. So like, you know, like when you need representation when you go into a police interview.
It was like a union.
Yes.
Yeah, like somewhere between a union and a sort of like, you know, like representation. So someone who can get all your documents and check stuff through for you, and then go in and say like, my clients demand.
My mom for me, I have to provide everything to her at the end of everything. So yes, mom, here we are.
My client demands a scan, and under section 3.1, you have to give her one. And this is like, you know,
I love that.
On this.
Yeah.
I think for now though, like we could be each other's that, you know, like I'll put my hand up here and say like, if any of you need me to come to the doctors with you, like I'll be there.
The whole gang.
Definitely.
Yeah,
it would
true.
But I think that's really true though, and also like to talk through an appointment afterwards, I found really helpful. When I did it with a friend who also has gynecological problems, and I found that really helpful to speak to somebody afterwards who has experience of being in the system and has experience of the kind of language and the kind of things, like seeing both sides of things and being able to kind of even further ask questions. I think one thing that I did I do it in the end? I'm sure, or maybe she told me to do it and I didn't. But was to ask if I have any questions after I've spoken to you, is there a way of me getting in touch with you? So like an email address or something like that to write some further questions down. So just that acknowledgement that you might not get everything in that time, and is there another way I can contact you to find out those things?
Yeah.
Something I do out of the strict rules that my mom imposed me of, you know, getting back to her that much. But I think most certainly because she's a doctor herself, so she has a need of information that is way too high compared to other families and people in general, even patients themselves. Like I went through this process all my life, so I am trained to ask questions and ask for a referral email, the name and surname of this doctor specifically, asking for all the documents at the end of the session, and what happened next. So you tell me, how long do I need to wait? These sort of things. How many times do I need to take the pill again? Because maybe I didn't write down stuff like that, which are crucial. But then it takes so much of their time because they've got, 10 minutes slot, which is silly. It should be as long as you need. But maybe
I thought this was like 10-minute slot, but you're only allowed to mention like one area.
One thing.
I know. My partner's always saying, because he's like riddled with stuff, but he never goes to the doctors. He's like, I'm waiting till I've got a day's worth, and then I'm just going to book in for the day.
Yeah, I love that. I've always said I would love to go to the doctors and have a full body, just complete everything. Like I just want the whole shebang.
Totally. You can have like some lunch. You can like, you know, sort of split it up through the day. Bring a picnic.
Oh wow.
I'm gonna have to make a move, but
it's actually 5. I didn't realize that. And if we want, we can close it as it is now. So
Sorry, my friend was just calling me.
So do you want to save the chat? I can save it and share it with you if you want, with the link.
Yeah, that would be good. Thank you.
Okie dokie. So I will share the chat. And
Brilliant.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Helen.
Oh, thanks for coming.
Just a quick reminder for Helen, because you are participants. Tomorrow there is Letitia workshop on written words about perception of menopause.
That's cool.
It's really hard because I've got so little time. It really is frustrating, but I know that you're recording a lot of things.
Yeah, we record. We record everything because we know that, you know, people might not be able to make it, but they still care about the topic. So I think this is the best thing that Zoom has taught us in this pandemic, that things should be recorded if possible and made available to watch later and yeah, experience in our own time.
Aw.
So that was brilliant. Thank you so much. And
Yeah.
do you want me to add the PowerPoint to the email as well? Shall I?
Yeah, you can do.
I'd like a closer look at some of those that you've been up to,
Okay.
Helen, definitely.
Brilliant, fantastic. And then I can place it on the website as well as a resource. If
Oh,
you're
that's
okay.
great.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much then.
Oh, thank you.
Enjoy the day.
Thank you so
Bye
much.
Bye,
everyone.
guys.
Bye bye.